Yeah, so I'm here with Amanda Sheriff, and we're here to talk about your book, The Overstreet Guide to Collecting Movie Posters, which you wrote with. I thought about that. That threw me for a loop. I was like, oh, you wrote it with Robert Overstreet. And then I was like, wait, no, he's been going for a while now.
He's still doing the pricing for the comic book price guide. So he still does all of the pricing for that. This was my project, but it's from his brand.
Oh, okay. Gemstone Publishing, which is your employer.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, the breakdown is Gemstone does the Overstreet comic book price guide, which is the Bible for any comic book collector. You pick up a book and it'll tell you what it's worth in what condition it's in. And I mean, there's thousands upon thousands of books listed in it.
Yeah.
So then we extend it out into these what we call how-to reference guides on collecting. So we've got one on collecting comics, one on comic and animation art. We've got this one on movie posters. I did one on concert posters. We got one on video games, and then we also have one on cosplay. So there's a bunch of different ones.
Well, yeah, that I think that's a really neat idea. And when I ran through Robert Overstreet's history, he started out as an arrowhead collector and a rock collector and a comic book collector, and he just had a voracious appetite for that weird thing that all of us have when we collect anything, which is the compulsion of having compiled information in a glossy cover. Like I have guides to matchbook cars or matchbox cars, guides to very, very specific purses. Like they're all out there, and it services that there is an innate need when it comes to collecting anything to have even a vague information source, which this your movie poster collecting guide is not vague at all. It's very well done, and it's really pretty, and and somebody had pointed out on the Hanging Out Poolside group that you wouldn't think that the need would be there for it, but reasonably there are a lot of movie poster collectors.
Yeah, there's tons of movie poster collectors, and what I think is so cool about this hobby is that anybody can get into it. I mean, there are hundreds upon hundreds of posters you can get for under $10.
Yeah.
That are authentic, original movie posters, all the way up to some that sell for, $300,000.
Yeah.
So it's for anybody who wants to get into it. I mean, some areas of collecting, unfortunately, it's a little harder if you don't have the cash for it. But with movie posters, anybody can do it.
Right. And with that, there are a lot of very, very ridiculous hobbies that, not ridiculous, but very, very stringent hobbies that are, you gotta pay up to even try. And you're paying up to even be the guy that everybody's going to make fun of because you just got into it. And you're like, well, I'm breaking the bank to do this. Well, yeah. Tough. But yeah, that is interesting because downstairs I have on the wall is my Invasion of the Body Snatchers poster, and that's framed and hung up, and then laying on top of my buffet is my the interview poster because I love The Interview, and one cost me $45 and the other one cost me $1, and that was the one thing that I thought about movie poster collecting is the scarcity of time and the methodology of when movies were originally brought out and given theater runs. They weren't given a theater run across the U.S. as they do like they get now. There were markets that you were involved in, like East Coast, Long Island, New York City. That was its own very specific market, or all the way down the coastline, or West Coast, or Midwest, and you're doing that amount of posters and that amount of advertising work for that small market. So it seems like older posters would always be scarcer and their value would always be higher because of the scarcity of it.
Yeah, it's definitely the scarcity and the artwork itself. You got to think about it. Back then, they didn't have movie trailers. They didn't have the internet. We were not saturated with what was coming out on film. So if you wanted to promote your new movie, you had to have a great poster that was going to say everything you needed to say in one image. This is, the representation of how cool this movie is, or how scary, or how romantic, or how fun. So that's why the artwork back in the 20s, 30s, 40s was so much more thought out. I mean, there's still great posters, don't get me wrong, but that's part of what makes those older ones so appealing. Plus, people weren't collecting back then. So when theaters were done, half the time they'd roll them up and throw them in the trash, or they'd be rolled up and tossed into corners of the projection room. And I mean, in some cases, whenever you hit World War II and paper drives and whatnot, people were donating paper. They were gone that way. Other people would use them to insulate their house or pad their floor. Wow. I mean, there are discoveries of movie posters, not on like a super regular basis, but where people tear up a linoleum floor and find a Frankenstein movie poster. Yeah. Or, tear out they're renovating a house and open up a wall and you find old newspapers and movie posters stuffed into the wall. It's crazy. Yeah. But, I mean, the rarity is why those older ones are so expensive, because they're harder to find and the artwork is so good.
Yeah. And you can go into any big box store or craft store and pick up a very movie poster specific size frame, and that wasn't always the case. And one of the most memorable posters I have seen was I think it was one of Chaplin's old posters, and it was gigantic. It looked like it was, I think it was 12, it was like 6 or 7 feet by 12 feet. It was huge. And it was, everything that needed to be, obviously not said, but everything that needed to be conveyed in that for the Chaplin film was there. And you think about it like, oh, that was on the side of a building, or that was in a grand lobby back when that's the other thing about movie poster collecting, is that it does bring back the nostalgia of giant grand movie theaters.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day with Katie and I were driving, and I had a vivid memory of the old Stony Brook Theater. And I remember you walked in the door, and the theater, so obviously movie theater buildings are always tall, and this was out on the East End, but when you walked in, the lobby was the concession stands. This concession stand was a square inside of this big, huge, like 35-foot room, and then they had posters everywhere, and they had a couple of games, and you just walked in there, and you were already in awe of everything. And then you're looking around, and all the cool posters are up. Like the first movie I saw there was Night of the Living Dead, which I bawled like a child because I was 4.5, and my dad thought I'd love it. I ended up going to see Little Mermaid instead. But that kind of everything with the aesthetic of everything with movies and film and promotion of film is all aesthetic, and it's all everything plays into each other cyclically, where it's like, well, you look at a movie poster and you think about when you saw that movie, and you think about that great time that you had there, and I went into the theater and they hadn't vacuumed in a long time. It was like some Carmike in Uniontown, and maybe they just weren't up to standards, but like the theater was a little dingy, but you still had a good time. Yeah, I think that's really cool. And and the ability to just go out and look, because it's all there. Reproductions are always going to be just as beautiful as the original, but if you want to be one of those people that is out digging for that kind of thing, you can. And with the amount of older people that pass on, and we have auctions around here everywhere, estate auctions, all that kind of stuff, you can definitely come across that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of places. I mean, there's one of my favorite places to use is emovieposter.com. Mm-hmm. They do 3 auctions a week.
Oh, wow.
And it's movie posters, it's stills, it's lobby cards, it's press books, it's inserts, scripts.
Wow.
The whole gamut of things. And I mean, they start their auctions at $1.
Wow.
Any poster that they have starts at $1.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's one that, that's a good one. And then if you want to go for like the higher end stuff too, you got Hakes Americana in York, you've got heritage auctions, and then you've got some websites that aren't necessarily auction based, but they've got the material like Cine Masterpieces, CINE Masterpieces. They've got great authentic, material too. So there's plenty of places like that, but then you can also find them, like you said, in estate sales and garage sales, and movie theaters even still give out posters.
Yeah.
I mean, the South York Theater, they have a box full of posters that they're just free posters.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're worth digging through, because even though more of the modern posters are not commanding nearly the prices as older ones, there are still some that will. If you pay attention, you can snag a free poster that if you wanted, you could flip for $50 or $80.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, which there's no high end like you don't really have to like get into a high end archiving process for it or anything like that. You can just throw it under UV glass and it's gonna stick for a good long while, because even with the mass market that is the current current movie. Excuse me, I'm gonna cut this little spot out. I get into this like weird stuttering thing. Even with the market as it is now, where everything is going for national and international release, and they're printing out 10, 15, 20,000 of the poster for Rogue One. Yeah, that's great, and you can have it on the wall. And even if you do take it home and you think, oh, it's gonna be worth something 100,000 years from now, with as market prescient as it is, you still have it on the wall and it still looks cool.
Yeah.
No matter what the movie is, if you like it, you're going, that's going to be the thing. And that was one of the things I wanted to bring up was, what is it? Does it matter whether the movie was popular, or does it matter that the art was beautiful?
Both.
Yeah.
There are posters that are bland and boring, but if the movie was successful and popular, poster's going to sell. On the flip side, there are posters that are fantastic and the movie was terrible, but those posters sell for a lot. One example, Clan of the Cave Bear. I think that would have been, I want to say late 80s, somewhere in the 80s. But the poster, it's just this, this woman's white face with a black line up the middle, and it's just this, weirdly artistic poster. Movie's not that good. Poster is always selling well in auctions. It's, because it's interesting artwork.
Right.
Another example, where I work, we deal a lot in superheroes and comic books and stuff. I write about all that stuff. And the boom of superhero movies we've had the past 10 years, not many of the posters do all that well, though the movies are really popular. But if you got good artwork, it will. So Suicide Squad, huge hype, mixed reviews, some negative. Some people didn't dig the movie, didn't think it was good as it would be. But they did 3 really, really good posters. And they outsell anything from Avengers or, a lot of the other ones.
That is kind of odd, because that does play into the tribalism of comic book geekdom. That, as soon as I saw Suicide Squad, I kind of I had a problem with breaking it down to the general programming and the general, how the hooks were written. And I was like, all right, that's not for me. That's not I wasn't a big fan of the Suicide Squad to begin with. And I wasn't a big fan of, and I'm not a big fan of stuff dudes it's kind of weird like that. So it didn't tickle me, but the art and the effects that were in Suicide Squad, not to poop all over the movie or anything like that, but the art and the effects in it really made the difference. That's one of my favorite movies. My Citizen Kane is Blade Runner, and Blade Runner barely made sense when it came out unless you were already a high-minded reader. And if you weren't going to understand the world that Philip K. Dick was trying to involve you in. But you look at the posters from the original Blade Runner release, they're gorgeous. Yeah. And of course they're going to draw you, and they're going to draw anybody in. And movies have done that to me before too, where I get into a routine where I'm shooting for stuff that I just don't want to have to think about. And, I see a really beautiful poster, and it's this really high-minded story about the Queen of England and the first time she got that stuff that you make guacamole out of, avocado. And I saw the poster for that, and I was like, oh, well, okay, I'll check out the preview. I checked out the preview, and I was like, well, I'm hooked already. It just, the art of the poster got me. The fact that it's M, the lady that played M in Goldeneye.
Judi Dench.
It's Judi Dench. She makes me so happy. The part looks great, and that movie's coming out soon. But it gets into that thing where it's something will hook you, and they try their best to do it. And especially with comic book movies, I'd love to have all the old X-Men posters from the early 2000s, but those movies were terrible compared to what we have now. Reasonably, they were poorly written, and they were really being pushed on people my age that would have loved the cartoon in the early 90s, and there was a lot of bad writing methodology that went into those films. They were great films. The posters are great, but I couldn't sit down and watch them again. You know, it's kind of odd like that.
Yeah.
And that's the difference is like, and that's the other thing that I wanted to think about, because I ran off on the new Star Wars franchises that constantly have beautiful posters that manage to somehow subconsciously release all the information about the movie, and then suddenly I have to read about it on some blog, and it makes me angry because sometimes I do want mystery. But the difference in, you know, the original release posters versus the value of posters that you're getting now, like the posters you're getting now are nothing in comparison to the original release. Not
yet, but what is interesting is the new wave of Star Wars movies. They're done so well, and you've got Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire, working on these new movies. So it's like, okay, we got some legit cred here that these are going to be good. And the posters have all done well. I mean, they're all still reasonable for just about any collector to pick up.
Yeah.
But you flip back to the prequel trilogy, and you can get those teasers and the original one-sheets for under $20 each.
Yeah.
I mean, I've picked all of them up. I have all of them for minus the circus poster for the last one. I've done all the other ones from the prequels, and I got all of them for probably under $20.
Yeah.
Now I can't say, I wasn't studying the market back then, so I can't say that they didn't have a skyrocket when they first came out. They very well may have, and for what we know, in a couple of years, if we kind of come down off of Star Wars again, that the ones that are selling now for $150 for, Rogue One and Force Awakens and the teaser for Last Jedi, they might be back down to the $20 range.
Right. And well, that's the other thought, is that, like, I always equated Star Wars posters to the idea that when the original trilogy came out in the 70s and 80s, that they set the parameters for everything that is Star Wars. And the art from the original posters is always going to be what they're trying to go for with the new ones, and they do such a great job of it. And that even with the prequels being, we all got excited and went and saw prequels in the theater, and they were not as exciting as we thought they'd be, that even still, when you pick them up at a low cost, it's kind of like Spawn comics. Spawn comics are only valuable if you have all of them, and having even the prequel Star Wars posters and everything, that's all the ephemera that's involved with the theater run from them, is what's going to be, now you have the complete set, and that's going to give them the value of the overall experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know that was long-winded, and I also brought up Spawn. It's very weird to have a guest, like, there's a third member in the studio right now. It's very odd. I keep looking at his eyes and his responses. So, but that, that is there is a huge gamble in it. No matter what you're collecting, there's a huge gamble in it. And, like, I'd love to start collecting old slot machines, but how many times do I have to pull the lever before it breaks, and I have to find a specialist to fix it?
Well, that's one thing about movie poster collecting that turns off some people. They're paper, so they are easily damaged. I mean, you can collect action figures, or you can collect model kits and, accidentally knock them off a table and they'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Or other things. I mean, lunchboxes, etc. There's so much stuff, coins, that is, not going to get messed up as easily. You pick up a rolled movie poster and squeeze it too tightly, and now you've got waving throughout the entire thing.
Right.
You use pins to keep it up, now you got holes in it. I mean, you put it in the wrong container and it will become yellowed and brittle. So that's the one downside with movie posters, is that they're a little more delicate and can get messed up. So you have to be careful with how you handle them and how you store them and how you frame them and all that good stuff.
Well, I was actually curious about that as a collector. How do you specifically display, or how do you particularly go about collecting movie posters and storage versus displaying because if you have something hanging on a wall, especially next to windows, UV is going to damage it.
Yeah, the most important thing you need to know is acid free. That is the most important. And don't put posters up against cardboard. Okay. So as far as framing goes, you want to, I mean, if you really want to go for the best experience, plexiglass with UV protection for your frame, and then on the back side you want artboard or foam core as your backing material. That way your poster is protected and from moisture, from sunlight. Plexiglass is plastic. It's better than regular glass because glass can trap moisture. It can conduct heat, and if you drop the frame while you're moving and it breaks, it scratches the poster. Plexiglass is a lot safer to use. And then when it comes to storing posters, you want to use Mylar sleeves, put the posters in those, or if you're going to roll them, you can, take 10 posters and roll them up together and then put them in a Mylar bag or, something that's acid free like that. Roll the ends up, and then you can put it in a cardboard tube as long as you've got that barrier.
Oh, okay.
So those are the types of tips that you need to know about to keep them protected when they're either framed or stored. To answer your other question, though, my husband and I have 5 posters hanging in our living room, and then I've got one in my office. We've got one at the top of the stairs in the house. So we've got a bunch, and we have a bad habit of collecting. So we have quite a few posters, and we like to rotate them out. So every couple of weeks, I take on the arduous task of swapping out posters for new ones.
I know how annoying it was for me when I found that Invasion of the Body Snatchers poster to put it in a frame. I would not want to have to do that more often, or on purpose.
Well, it's an encouraging thing for me to think about the cool new stuff I'm going to see.
Well, that's true.
I mean, as far as collecting goes, between the two of us, we have a couple of different things we like to collect. And the one thing that's important to me is not to buy something and then just toss it in a drawer. Yeah. I mean, if we're going to spend money on something, I want to see it. Well, so, that's why we will swap them out and put up new ones and be like, yay, look at this new one we just got. This is so exciting.
Well, I had that issue for a very long time where I was collecting DVDs and I'd get super excited about it and I'd buy. This was back when DVDs were a thing. That's how old I am now. But back when they were the big thing and you're paying $18, $22 for Kelly's Heroes in a cardboard box because it was the first time it was ever on DVD and you could go to the store and pick it up. And I'd get it and I'd watch it and then that fervor would disappear and then I'd end up with a shelf full of DVDs and then I get mad at myself for having a shelf full of DVDs because I have no idea what to do with them. So I tried to stop actively collecting because I did that, comic books as a kid or Dungeons and Dragons miniatures that I would buy and paint and then they'd sit because I was a dork and I didn't have any friends that would actively engage in Dungeons and Dragons with me. Still have that problem. But I had that thing where I'd get obsessed with a thing and then it'd just end up in a closet or in a drawer. And with the poster downstairs, I have the one and my wife and I have a penchant for if something the display of all the dishes with all the dishes and stuff, stylistically, it was a perfect find. We found it at a thrift shop. Suddenly, I've got to change my entire dining room because I found that. So I know that if I find an HR guy, if I find an original Aliens poster and put it up, I'm going to have to just change the paint scheme, change the furniture, do everything. I'm going to have to build a giant skeleton chair into the wall just to match that poster. And then when I get bored of that, I'm going to have to do it over again. So but that's really, that is the thing is with other, even with my books, I have them. I read through them. If I ever need to reference them again, they're there, and they are something that they are paper as well. But I don't have a problem with fiddling about with them. I don't have a problem with getting mad and throwing one across the room. It's just kind of just for fun or whatever. But it seems like movie posters would be one of those super tense. It would cause anxiety in me. Because the idea of how easily it is damaged versus collecting records. Yeah, collecting records, you're going to play them. You're going, they get use, and you don't have to have that slight fear of, taking it out or accidentally ripping a corner, like, something, you're busy changing a poster and somebody walks in the door more briskly than you expected, and suddenly you're freaking out and surprised. So that would cause me a whole lot of anxiety. super much. One thing I did want to bring up was a beautiful poster of The Thief of Baghdad, which I've never heard of the film, and it was an older film, and one of the Poolside fans brought it up. She brought up a version of the poster that was more modern. And that was a topic I wanted to bring up with you, was the Mondo, like, I'm not sure if you follow Mondo at all, but they do all these super special things for giant pop culture icons. Like they did tiki mugs for Prometheus, or no, whatever the latest in the Aliens line was.
Covenant.
Yeah, Covenant. So they did tiki mugs that were only released at whatever the one big theater is that has the bar at, I can't remember.
Draft House.
Yeah,
Alamo
Draft House. But they did stuff like that. And then they do new art for old films, and they do that. And what does that signify, that the art is always going to be more important than the film, or does that mean that the film is so important that we still create art of it? Because we're talking about films that are 40, 50, 60 years old that have already gotten shelved somewhere. I mean, I realize the general overall fervor of a giant cloud dissipates. Like even with every new release, everybody gets disinterested in the last Star Wars by the time they find out the next one's coming. So everything kind of wanes a little bit. But I mean, does the idea of having pop culture artists making all this effort for like new Blade Runner posters that are super beautiful and super minimalistic style, and it's the old Blade Runner because the new one's coming out, is it an effort to take advantage of the fact that a new one's coming out, that they can reignite the fire in the old one, or is it just that was such a pop icon that we're still in love with it as a culture?
Honestly, I would say it's both. When you take something like, using Blade Runner again as an example, that is a cult hit, so it's going to be a passionate following, and also it's timely because there's a sequel coming out. The original artwork was really cool, and it attracted not just sci-fi fans, not just cult movie fans, but also just flat out movie poster collectors, because the art was good. So, doing a new version, it does reignite that feeling of excitement that you had over the first one, because at this point, like, those posters are still great, but you've seen them 1,000 times.
Yeah.
A reinterpretation can make you excited all over again for the project. And they are really, Mondo as an example, they're really good artists and clever. So they come up with some really cool ideas, and it's a more modern style, which will appeal to younger collectors, who might appreciate some of the older work, but not necessarily connect with it nearly as much. But when it's something that looks a little bit newer, a little more edgy, or brighter, that's going to attract our very short attention spans, it'll do well. So, I mean, you've got that, the fact that it's reigniting that enjoyment of something and bringing it back to what is always been a popular project or film. And what's neat is that it's, like you said, they did the tiki mugs. They also have done reissued, Waxworks, I think, has done reissued records. And you've got cool new cover art for the albums. So, I mean, I actually was just looking into this. I mean, the Reanimator one, the one for Ghostbusters, maybe? Or Alien, or The Thing. Somewhere along that. They did like a reissue of the original soundtrack with like all new artwork on the cover of the album. And I mean, and the fact that they're a limited edition, that's another key that's gonna snag people. If you've got the good artwork and then you say it's a limited number, then people are gonna want it because it immediately goes up in value. I mean, we were at Texas Frightmare in May, And this was the first con I've been to that Mondo was actually set up. They had a booth.
Oh, wow.
They had a line longer than most of the guests.
I'm not surprised because they do stuff that is just as outrageous as it gets and as limited, because one of the records that they repressed was the Alien soundtrack, and inside of the disc was clear, and it had xenomorph blood inside of it, which is, I watched the process on how that's done. I think they only did 25 of them, but it was a $300 album because the process that went into it was so ridiculous. And you know that if it's the first time that Mondo as a company is actually showing up for something, you know they're going to go big with it. And when you love Mondo, like I love Mondo, I don't have enough alertness with the internet to actually pay attention to what's coming out, when it's coming out, and to make myself available for the moment that it's coming out. Because as soon as it's bought, it's hitting a secondary or tertiary market for twice that. And it's like, well, that's kind of, I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate the fact that the adventure of trying to be the guy first in line online for a Mondo exclusive is super fun. Yeah. But at the same time, it's the disappointment of knowing that if you're not that guy, you're gonna have to pay a lot for whatever it is you wanted. Yeah. And but the stuff that they do is just really cool, and it has that same appeal that all the superhero movies have to comic books, which is getting people to pay attention to an overall genre. Mm-hmm. Instead of just one very specific thing. They just run the gamut, and they say, look, anything that's movie related, let's see what we can do and inflate it as far as we can and wait till the bubble pops, and when it pops, we're done with it. And with modernity being the short attention span and the need for constant content, it is a really good way to combat that and create something that is going to be lasting. Mm-hmm. Because, any of the posters that I would buy from Mondo would be going up on would be going up in a frame, and they would be hung beautifully presented. And I probably would redecorate a couple of rooms around them. I'd be pretty excited about that. But yeah, I was going to say that ran me off on that was the Thief of Baghdad. The poster was new art for an old film that I had never even heard of. Mm-hmm. And, it doesn't seem like that happens all that often. Because, I have, I think sitting right behind me is that trash bulk movie box, the drive-in cult hits. There's a lot of trash in that thing. I bought it used off of eBay for like $10. That was fine. That was worth it. There's 50 discs. There's 400 films in there. Most of them are junk. I'm not going to pay a lot for somebody to reproduce a poster of any of the titles on that box. Because we don't need that. I think that's really cool that they do that kind of stuff. And with meshing with current reality, and me bringing up a topic that I wanted to bring up anyway, was I think it'd be really cool if they redid the Gone with the Wind poster as a human woman and an AI man, because the singularity is coming. And I think that would be the most beautiful poster in the world, because that is Gone with the Wind in itself is one of the most iconic posters ever made. Yeah. And you're right in that everything that needed to be conveyed was given every inch of detail, and everything that you need to know about Gone with the Wind. You walk by you walk by the poster, it's going to stop you dead. And let's go back then. Walking out the theater, just saw whatever, and you see the Gone with the Wind is coming up, coming up, and you see the poster. It's going to stop you in your tracks, and it's going to tell you this movie that is coming soon is going to change your life forever. And they do it through the most beautiful style. Mm-hmm. And that poster in itself is one that is absolutely memorable. Anybody that has power in their house has more than likely seen Gone with the Wind, which is weird that I haven't. But yeah, and I'm a huge cinephile, and I know other cinephiles that haven't seen it, but it's just one of those things. But that is the one thing where no matter what that movie is, that poster will outlast that film. Mm-hmm. Because it is beautiful. A friend of mine just got Somebody had a Gone with the Wind poster, and they shellacked it to a board. And they did it really well, which was odd. Like, it wasn't like, it's not like an Elvis clock, which everybody, I think I have one in the house somewhere. It's a guitar with an Elvis. Anyway, but it's really well done. And I'm not sure whether the poster was one of the originals or not, or is the amount of data necessary for obsessives to find out the run numbers and all that available easily?
Run numbers, it would really depend on how careful the attention was paid whenever the movies originally came out. There are ways that you can tell if a poster is an original, and there are definitely lots of people you can talk to that can authenticate. The places I mentioned earlier, they've got experts who will study a poster when it comes in. Because that's the other thing you got to be careful about. You can easily collect movie posters that are all just reprints easily. You can get anything that way.
Oh, yeah.
But if you really want the authentic, this is the OG, this is the one that came out, when the movie came out, in whatever year that came out, you got to kind of look into it, and there's the ways you can tell with the quality of the paper, the quality of the image, whether or not it was folded, how it was folded. I mean, there are, at certain points they would fold a poster into sections of 8. And that was done at this period of time. So if the movie came out in this period of time and the poster is folded that way, then there's one little, you can tick that off the list that it's probably an original. So there's definitely a lot of factors that go into authenticating. And what's also cool about the hobby itself is that there are forums for fans who will love to tell you all about their collection and their expertise and will share information. So, doing the research is really important if you want to make sure it's an original. I mean, you can find a reputable auction house or dealer and know that they're giving you an original. And you can trust that flat out. Right. But, if you find something on eBay, that gets a lot harder. Now, again, if you want to do a little bit of research, if you find that a movie was poster's only issued as double-sided, as a lot of newer ones are, and they're offering a single-sided poster, not an original. Yeah. Or if it comes in it's like cardboard stock, or not card stock, probably not an original, because movie poster is usually a little bit thinner material.
Oh yeah, no, it's its own. I was gonna say that's its own very just like newsprint paper. Yeah, it has a very specific touch to it. Yeah, and it's got its own weight and all that. Yeah, that's odd. And I was gonna say that it does seem like when it comes to large purchases with movie posters, it seems like every avenue that you should explore is pretty easily accessed and attained. Like if you're gonna pay, $45,000 for a Chaplin poster or a Buster, or even more for a Buster Keaton original, you would absolutely exhaust you'd probably spend a decent amount of money exhausting every effort to authenticate and have it authenticated. And that's great that it's there, and it's not as obscure a hobby as, you're talking about 10 people that meet once every 5 years because they're scattered across the globe. We're talking about people that are there and they're always there. Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether it's friends that collect horror film posters or, because there is that specificity to it as well. You could go for classics, or you could go for, maybe you're a big fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs and you love that style of his, the guy who did his covers, which I can't remember right now. My recall sucks. But the guy who did his book cover art also did poster art. So, you can track down that very specified thing. And I was going to say, yeah, because one of my favorite, I need to bring this up because I didn't know this. Jack Davis was an incredibly important poster designer, and he did one of my favorite films, Kelly's Heroes, which is that's one of the most underwritten classics in the entire world. I don't know why nobody gives it the hype that it should have. It's one of the best. And he also did Woody Allen's Bananas, which is my wife's favorite my wife's favorite person is Woody Allen. And the funny story behind Bananas is I was looking for that. I ended up with a documentary on the banana industry in Brazil, and that was a terror of that was heartache versus watching a Woody Allen film. That was not good. So I just want to make sure that ended up on there. But Jack Davis, it seems like he did a lot. And I bought your book, and I swear I meant to sit and read it cover to cover, but my week just blew up. So my apologies.
No,
I got into it, but I have it now. Yeah, I have it now, and it's not like when I was to stick with Overstreet as an idea. I remember when having the newest collector's guide for the comic books was like $45 or $50 because it's a giant book, and I understand that. But this, your guide to collecting movie posters, would drop $15, and it's there, and the information is always there, and I don't have to scour the internet forever to look for it.
Yeah,
which is awesome. And
I mean, I featured I think 5 movie poster artists, because when you were saying about people collecting like horror specifically or an actor specifically. Some are all about the artist. I mean, Jack Davis, he did terrific posters. That Kelly's Heroes, what I love about that poster, he made Clint Eastwood, who'd already been getting a reputation for being the scowling, macho, tough guy. He drew him with this like cracked grin on his face. He looks handsome. He looks carefree. And I love that fact.
Yeah.
The one he did for... what was it? Oh, it's a mad, 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 mad world.
I think that's the right amount of mads.
I mean, it's chaos, but it's perfect.
That movie, I was gonna say, your husband I think your husband sat me down and made me watch that at least twice, and I still can't figure it out. Apart from knowing that every comedic actor that I'd ever want to see was alive in the same frame of film is really awesome. But at the same time, I still can't figure out the point of that movie. just pure chaos. It's like I was gonna say, I'm not sure who did the poster, but 1941 was one of my favorite Spielberg films, and that's another unsung film. But the poster for it was great, and that movie was start to finish chaos, and it was ridiculous. And you tell people you should go watch 1941 especially if you love Kelly's Heroes, or where there's a comedic take on war films. It's some of John Belushi's best work, and he plays a drunk pilot who's flying a P-51 in San Francisco. Like, it's just ridiculous, and that kind of stuff. Like, it does seem like once everybody finally realizes that this obscure thing should have been a thing to begin with, like everything all of a sudden pops and the pot boils over and everybody gets excited about it, and then suddenly. You happen to collect weird, like Japanese cult films, and you collect their posters, and suddenly everybody finally pays attention to stuff like Toilet of the Dead and other weirdo films I've come across, and people start paying attention to that, and they're like, oh, well, suddenly my closet full of posters are worth something. And there's always that chance.
Yeah. And then you're getting into another facet of the hobby is international posters. For some people, if they're going to collect Godzilla or James Bond, they want the Japanese or the British version, the country of origin.
You're right.
But also, there are great international posters for U.S. films. One of my favorites is a Star Wars poster, a Japanese B2, that's like just the Millennium Falcon. It's huge, and it's bright, like blue, and it's gorgeous, and it's amazing.
And it's just, and I was gonna say, and it wasn't used in our market,
in the U.S.
Yeah, which is pretty fascinating.
And I'm not the only person, because every time it comes up for auction, it always ends up selling for more than I can afford.
Yeah.
But there's tons like that. Another random example. With horror movies, the Friday the 13th, I think it was part 5, New Beginning. Not the greatest movie. Japanese B2. Again, really wicked art. Like, it's the guy, he's up against the tree, he's got the belt around his eyes. It's brutal looking. I mean, it looks like something that you'd see out of like a Saw movie, not a Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
But it was really cool artwork.
Yeah.
I mean, there's those nuggets you can find in the international market.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say with the Japanese, I can't remember the name of the film, but yeah, there was one of their horror always pushes the limits. always. There's one that I can't remember, but it was about a guy and he ended up like cutting some dude's face from ear to ear, and he smiled and you could see all his teeth, and like their horror puts me at the weirdest points in my life that I either can't understand it or I'm so terrified of it that I don't want to see it like I just can't handle it. And it just seems like that's a cultural thing for them. Like they love to push the limits, especially when it comes to, that's their release. You go sit at the movie theater, you could take it as far as you can, and they do it well. And but yeah, that I wouldn't have thought of that of collecting British only James Bond posters. I don't know why I didn't. I've read all the books. I obsessed over James Bond for a long time, and that's a hobby I couldn't afford to get into it if I tried. Collecting all the old toys and all the old posters and the originals. Like I've seen a really bad Moonraker, like a poor quality, a poor condition Moonraker poster for sale for $75, and I'm not going to spend $75 on that.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit high for that one.
It does,
because the James Bond ones, some of them really they will sell for $10,000.
Oh yeah.
If it's Robert McGuinness art.
Oh okay.
If it's the hat trick Bond, McGuinness, and Moore or Connery.
Oh.
Those those are gonna sell for bank.
Right.
And there's plenty of other ones, like, no disrespect intended, but Pierce Brosnan movies. The posters are not great. They're not going to sell for very much.
Yeah.
But some of the Daniel Craig ones, the one, like the Spectre posters, they're really creative. They're pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's pretty brand spanking new still.
Yeah.
They do decent at auctions.
Well, I was going to say, I did love Spectre so much. I thought they got me in the feels with all that, like where I was obsessed with James Bond as a kid. I loved Pierce Brosnan. I did love the Pierce Brosnan movies because I was a dumb kid back then. Like, I wasn't a high-minded art critic at the time, so of course I'm not gonna question whether or not James Bond should be falling down a building or whatever and surviving. That was fun, and it reinvigorated the fun for people for a more youthful crowd, because Connery Moore fans were already your granddad's age in the 90s. Not specifically, but, they were already getting older and older. And it's like, well, what do you do? Well, you reinvigorate it by making it a bad popcorn movie. Yeah. You go, you sit, you drink your soda and you eat your popcorn, and you watch James Bond do some weird stuff. And then they brought out the Daniel Craig line, and Casino Royale was really good, and I liked the poster, and they did tease everything right. And then I watched that, and then the next one came out, and I was terrified that it was going to be bad, and it didn't feel right, and the third one didn't feel right. And then Spectre, they brought it all back together, and it all made sense again, and I was happy. I was satisfied. And as a James Bond fan, I know that they are going to, they'll hook kids that are 17, 18 that finally sit down and watch through the Daniel Craig collection because they bought it on DVD for $18. Mm-hmm. So, no, that's one of those, like, I always wondered I did wonder this week whether the franchise pushes the price or if, the art in itself does. Because, the older James Bond posters were perfect and beautiful and a study in art on their own. But, like, does that drag up the price of the newer ones? Because, the posters weren't that great.
It's definitely the art in respect to that, because like I said earlier, you're going to find posters that are really good art for a movie that's not so great that will do well. And I mean, again, using James Bond example, the Spectre posters, as far as I know, they're usually selling more than the other ones for Daniel Craig. Yeah. Because the artwork's a little bit cooler.
It is. They did really good with that. Yeah. And they focused so hard on that opening with the Sugar Skulls and Day of the Dead art. Like, they focused really hard on that. Yeah. And that was great. But again, like, I'm trying to think of what it was. That was not the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean, the one beforehand. The one that's I think it was number 4.
Yeah.
Where all the pirates came together in the Magic Cove and okay.
Stranger Tides?
I forget. I'm a huge fan of it because it's dumb, because it's a dumb popcorn flick. I've always loved Pirates of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. Their poster art featured one of the characters that was in the film, and his stage name is Rico the Zombie Boy. If you've ever seen a picture of him, he's a man. He's tattooed from literally head to foot as a skeleton. He's, he's a clothing model and all that. He was in that movie for 25 seconds.
Yeah.
And all of their posters featured him because visually, he's beautiful. But that movie was forgettable. So, it seems like they've done stuff like that before too, where they take on a kernel of the film and they focus really hard on campaigning on that with their press, and then like the posters will be worth something because they're really pretty, but at the same time what they focused on either wasn't in the film, was cut from the film last minute, or just wasn't even that big a thing at all.
And that's a funny aspect too with looking at the comparison of U.S. versus international versions. You can see sometimes a drastic difference in the artwork that it signifies a different tone in the movie. Strangely enough, the first example I'm coming up with was a Zac Efron movie a couple of years ago, and I can't remember what it's called right now. But I think it was about him and some friends sharing an apartment, early 20-something thing, and he meets a girl. And it's like, it was marketed as a comedy, and the poster in the U.S., it looks funny. Like, they're making faces, and one guy's like licking a spoon. I mean, it's a silly 20-something comedy. But then I think it was the British or the French version of the poster. It looks like When Harry Met Sally. Oh. It's completely different artwork. It's him and the girl, and it looks like it's a romantic comedy, not, a straight comedy. So, like, that can make a huge difference if, like you said, they're focusing on one obscure fact in the movie, or it could totally change the mood and make it seem like it's a different flick than it actually is. Yeah. And the other fun thing is, if you want to, get into nitty-gritties, if a movie features an actor from a different country, their country of origin will focus on them on the poster. So you look at Love Actually. It's a cute poster. Yeah. You got all these big British stars on the artwork. The one in Argentina, I think it was Argentina, the guy who played Carl, the love interest of the one girl, he is featured heavily on their poster because that's his country. Oh, wow. So that's kind of a fun, quirky thing to think about with, like, if you're a big fan of a movie, if you want to snag, from different areas of the world, different versions of the poster, sometimes very different, sometimes a little different. And I also think for, movie dorks like me, they like knowing those little facts. It's almost like you're sharing an inside joke. Yeah. Because somebody else will look at that and just be like, oh, that's the guy from, that one part in the movie.
Yeah. That's the one thing, like, it does, like, the idea of a cinephile has really just over the years morphed into dorkhood. It's like there's no way to be like super high-minded about films anymore, because it is those little tidbits, and it's those boom shots that are that are still in the film that are going to be like the thing that sticks now. Yeah. So that I was trying to think. That's probably why I had a glassy-eyed look on my face. Was I remember a mutual friend of ours had posted. It was an international version of it was either a very tame film or it was a really ridiculous horror film here, and one of the international posters was completely wrong. Like, it was the polar opposite of whatever the film was. Like, it was either like just a kind of regular film here, and like the poster in a different country was like made it seem like a murder massacre kind of thing, or vice versa. I can't remember, but that's I was trying to bring that up, and I can't remember what it was, but it was from a long time ago. And he has a problem with posting it every night from about 11 o'clock until 4 a.m. So I get his notifications all the time. So it's no surprise that information passed. But yeah, I was gonna say, it seems like they can do that too, because the language barrier, and even with the amount of time that languages have been around in English versus everything else, translations, how thorough they can be, it seems like it's pretty easy to get it wrong. Just enough. Enough.
Either that or trying to appeal to the style or the culture or the mood of a different country. Because I mean the purpose, like, movie posters are advertising material. Like, that's what they are. Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes they will miss the mark if they're trying to pull you in to go see the movie. Right. Or even they'll have some stupid tagline that doesn't make sense to try to, catch your attention. And then you see the movie and you look at the tagline, you're like, that doesn't have anything to do with what I just saw.
Yeah.
Like there's little details sometimes that will, can make a difference of making somebody want to go see the movie versus not. And more recent movie posters, there's not a ton of really good artwork because we've got trailers that drop on the internet and then within 5 minutes have 100,000 hits. And then, within an hour have 1 million hits. Right. So there's a lot of, I don't want to be disrespectful and say lazy, but, there's not a lot of creativity that goes into some of the posters. Now, the fact that collecting has become such a big deal, there are more that are trying harder to get creative. I think that like the DC posters, they're starting to try a little harder. The Dark Knight, when that came out in 08, 09, they had some pretty decent posters for that. The one Joker teaser of him looking through the translucent glass and he says he's painting why so serious, it looks like he's painting it in blood. That sucker can go for a couple $100. Wow. And it was just a cool idea.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, and that seemed like everything matched up so perfectly with that and that campaign, and there was they did a very good job of combating the constancy of everybody gets to be Sherlock Holmes the instant anything's announced. Just from that seems like that could be one of the drawdowns from such immersive poster art, is that as soon as posters go up, people are going to dig the life out of them, and they're going if you're putting up a poster 3 or 6 months in advance, by the time people are going to be so immersed in it. And they're going to be sick and tired of it by the time the movie actually comes out. There is that kind of conundrum of, it seems like the movie industry is fighting the amount of content put out about their content versus putting out too little, putting out too much, or trying to find that balance where there can still be an appreciation of the art of something, instead of just, oh well, they finally dropped their first poster and it's just it's a all black panel with numbers on it, or it's look this poster, look at this Godzilla, it looks great, and then you watch the movie and Godzilla's not even in it.
That's where getting a couple different versions, different styles of poster can come into play. Not as big of a modern trend with the exception of the bigger releases where you'll get different styles that can bring some excitement back in. I mean, like you said, if people are going to get sick of seeing that one poster, issue a new one and it's a whole new image to dissect or get excited about. Yeah. I mean, the Wonder Woman posters, they did 4 teasers for that one, and they're all just Gal Gadot, and it's I said her name wrong, Gadot.
Good. Close enough.
It's power and it's wonder and courage and these big words, but she just looks fierce and she looks tough and she looks gorgeous, and it's I can't wait to see this movie. Yeah. So when you do it that way, that's that definitely helps. When The Force Awakens came out, I remember people dissecting that poster. They were like, well, that looks like the steps from Empire Strikes Back whenever he was Han Solo was trapped in carbonite, so maybe they're gonna go back to the Cloud City, and there's so much excitement about all of that it can end up, like you said, getting to the point where you're like, okay, I've got the point now.
Well, that was the thing with, especially with the Force Awakens, was I was super excited about it. I was incredibly excited about it. And then they started dropping posters, and then somebody dropped it was a leaked photo of one of the toys that had accidentally been sent out with the name of the character on it, and then there were it was the fan theories are super fun and they're super great, but when you're giving when you take everything as an indicator of what the fan theory is going to be, I followed a Twin Peaks fan group, theories group for the entire return. I should not have, because I wanted to put my head through a wall before people were obsessing over a golden shovel and how oh, well, in the original, he's holding the golden shovel to break ground on the Great Northern. It's like, no, you're not from here. You don't understand that that's a thing that we constantly do. There's nothing to that. Like, groundbreaking with a golden shovel, no biggie. But there was a golden shovel in the new one. Oh, God. It just, and that's the thing is that, like, I am that market that is, I love going to the film. I love going to the movies. I absolutely will do it more often than most people. Like, got the Regal thing. I'm almost on diamond status, which is the top that you can get, because I've been there almost 40 times this year. And I'll go see bad movies just because I like to go and have that experience. Mm-hmm. And when I have to sit through when I have to sit through the Last Jedi preview for an entire year, and I'm watching, and I'm like watching Snatched, the movie that had what's her name in it. It was a really good movie, by the way. You wouldn't believe it, but it was worth going to see in theater. Really good film. But I have to see the Star Wars preview in that film. That doesn't seem like the right market at all. And
it does seem a little bit off. Usually they're a little bit better at marketing correctly.
But it's the oversaturation. And I was going to say, but being a huge fan of films as I am, and going to the movies as you are, because you and I think we had a mild measuring contest over ticket stubs. Which if I had all my stubs from when I was a kid, I'd go to my dad and I would go to 2 or 3 films a weekend because we had nothing else to do. Mm-hmm. He's a single dad, no idea what to do. We're gonna go see every film that's in theater this week. So, but yeah, and it gets into that whole oversaturation thing of like, I want to appreciate a poster, and I want to, if I want to appreciate a poster most, I'm going to dig into the artist, or, we're going to spend the time to develop I think my program is all wrong because I don't even think this is a thing anymore, but like whatever ad agency we go to, we got this kid who's in the draft room and he's real good, and his name's Peter Max, and we have no idea why he doesn't fit in here, but people seem to love his art, and we're going to develop that, and we're going to let him develop that, and then all of a sudden he's doing Sgt. Pepper's, or all of a sudden he's doing the art for Yellow Submarine. Like, it seems like that ability for those kind of stories to develop just aren't there, and it doesn't seem like the need is there, or the need is there, but maybe the assumed need isn't. Like, maybe the idea is like, well, we've got all this and the digital frontier, and we can do this. And even with The Dark Knight Rises, they did the I forget what it was. Because I don't have the kind of mindset for it, but they had it was a video that was released. It was like 17 seconds, and underneath for the audio layers was a binary code that led to a website. That it was a really cool thing to do,
right? And
that's really fun. But when that becomes the common thing, it's like anybody that likes a certain aspect of movies, like they just made Movie Ticket. The Netflix guy. Also does, I forget what it is, but he does the thing where you can go to the movies once a day for a month. And it was $50 a month. They just dropped it down to $9 a month. And, which I thought about doing, but then I was like, well, I'm not going to go to the movies every day. My work schedule doesn't fit that. It'd be cool, and I'd like that, but I don't think, it seems like once one thing is so focused on, we finally do come to a head where they're like, okay, well, let's stop focusing on this and, take some super high-end street artists, or take some guys that are working for Funko, and hey, let's let them work on some movie posters. Let's just do something weird here. You're a graphic artist. Let's track down Banksy. Let Banksy do the next Star Wars poster. Just for the sake of doing it. And I think that would be really fun, and that would bring back the importance of that kind of advertising
of the artwork.
And it is 100% advertising art. Mm-hmm. It's 100% commercial art, but it still that draws that line between whether it's valuable or not, because it's an advertisement. It's like looking at a cigarette pack. The American Spirits pack is really pretty and really well done, but does that make it worth anything? Because it's a pack of cigarettes.
Well, I mean, that gets into a whole new can of worms, because, I mean, people collect cardboard boxes that were used to ship, Barbie dolls.
Yeah.
and it's just the Barbie logo. Or
yeah, it's
cereal box flats from the General Mills Monsters. I actually just a couple months ago was researching that, and you can get a box flat from the 70s for $600.
oh my.
4 of them together have sold for like over $3,000. The cereal box.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just
So-
don't. I totally understand it, and I'm super like, and I never want to sound like I'm downing anybody for anything that they do, because if you got something to hang on to,
Yeah.
hang on to it and do it. That's really cool. But you're right. If people would pay more attention to movie poster art, I'd probably be more satisfied by the end of the day. But that's just me, you know. Like that is definitely a selfish statement. It's like I really wish I could walk past a giant poster that just caught my eye and really, you know, didn't have Dwayne The Rock Johnson on it. That'd be cool.
For some studios, they are starting to pay a little bit more attention. But I mean, in general, if you want the really good artwork, you do have to go back at least 30 years. I mean, there are some good stuff that have been in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Yeah, but if you want like a really solid collection of the good stuff, you do have to go back. I mean, you got the Universal Monster stuff, 20s, 30s, 40s. Their art was just fantastic.
Astounding. Yes.
And then you got the older Disney posters that sell for you know, a pretty penny, and they had really great artwork. Obviously, they have great artwork. I mean, it's Disney. The, you know, some of the older film noir posters, the older musical posters, the Tarzans. I mean, there's a tons of different like genres or subgenres or series that still do have great artwork. And I mean, for some of them, even if, you know, you don't have a couple spare $100,000 to spend, if you've got $1,000 to spend or $500 to spend, you can still get a decent poster from one of those groups. If you are cool with getting the re-release or the half sheet or one of the lesser known movies. You know, there's a lot of different options to still get like really good artwork if you feel like the more modern stuff isn't quite as exciting. And the other fun thing about poster collecting, it's also really personal. You know, yeah, there are people who will look at it just with the artistic eye or as an investment. I've talked to people who they see it as, I buy posters instead of stocks and bonds. It's an investment, flat out. But for a lot of people, it's the enjoyment of the artwork. I mean, that's what drew me in. I can still vividly remember being in my aunt and uncle's house and walking past my cousin's bedroom and not walking, running, because he had the poster for Jaws on his bedroom door.
Wow.
And it scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
When I was a kid. You know, I still vividly remember the feeling of anxiety of having to dart past his room because that shark might jump off the poster and get me.
You're right.
You know, or being almost a teenager and seeing the posters for Clueless or Empire Records, and it's these gorgeous teenagers and they're larger than life and they're so cool. You know, I mean, that's my experience.
Yeah.
Everybody has an experience like that if they're into these kinds of things. Like you know, you get excited about James Bond. You're gonna get excited about those posters because it's James Bond. Whereas other people might get excited because it's Robert McGuinness art, or because it was the time period when they were growing up. If you're a fan of, you know, Audrey Hepburn,
oh yeah,
you'll get excited about those posters for that reason. I mean, there's so many different reasons and motivations for collecting. Yeah. Which is cool. Or, you know, again, we go back to the rarity, and that's not just the older stuff. You know, you got a recalled poster like Pulp Fiction. The original version, Mia's on the bed and she's holding a pack of cigarettes. It's Lucky Strike. They did not get permission. So there was a cease and desist. Posters were pulled, but they were still kept. And now if you can find a Lucky Strike version of that poster, and that was in 94, I think. Yeah. You know, it's pretty recent.
Yeah, 93 or 94. I can't remember off the top of my head.
You know, 2 other recent examples, the Spider-Man, they did the poster before 9/11 happened. And in the original version, you can see the Twin Towers reflected in his goggles. You find that one. That one was recalled. Another one would be Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the one with Rooney Mara. The original, I think it was the British version. Was it the British version? She was topless, completely topless, on the poster. And obviously people didn't like that, so they pulled it. Now, you know, the text is over her her tatas.
Mm-hmm.
So, like
Yeah.
there's that fun aspect, and that even goes back into the 40s. The Outlaw poster with Jane Russell, she's showing a little bit of cleavage, a little bit of leg. People were not happy about that one.
Yeah.
So because of that, it sells for more.
Yeah, and I was just and that opens the that opens the critical inquisitiveness of like, look at how far we've gone, especially with decency standards. Look at how far everything's gone. It's weird and it's fun and it's exciting to explore and try to understand, but there's no reason to ever really understand it. Once you get through that, there's not really anything. I was gonna say, yeah, it is personal because I really would love a multiplicity poster because I love that movie.
Yeah.
And the poster's not that great. It's just a bunch of Michael Keatons, which for whatever reason is a joke nowadays. But more than one Michael Keaton would be pretty fun. But number 4, the actions of number 4 in that film, they're quotable. They're super fun, and you're gonna if you manage to hit your hand with a hammer, and you've seen that movie, you're gonna use his language 100%. You're gonna act like him for a second, and you're gonna call yourself Steve.
And the fun thing is, you could probably find that poster for $20 or less.
Yeah.
So I mean that's also fun. Finding the stuff that you care about that others might not care about as much, and you can be like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, and it's not like this is one thing that if I do really want to go find something, especially when it comes to like posters, like I collect downstairs is a bunch of my Stedman's. I have a bunch of the Stedman posters, and I'm happy to order them online. But like when it comes to, there are weird things that you'll take that venture of, I'm not gonna buy it until I find it out in real life. Like you have that hunt thing, and I have that with the Who Sell Out. That's the last of their studio albums that I don't have. I've been looking for it for 9 years. I've come across it twice, and I would not pay the money for the copies because they were garbage, and they were looking for a lot of money because it was the most popular album. I don't know why. No hits on it. But either way, like, it seems like movie posters, sometimes you do like, out running through antique stores or out going through yard sales and stuff like that, you will come through giant pockets of it, of people that just happen to have them, or used to run a theater, or, whatever, for whatever reason, they have a large collection of it, and there it is right in front of you, and you're going to find that one you were looking for. But I feel like with movie posters, that is probably something I'd make the effort to, like, seek out. Yeah, you got plenty of marketplaces. Go buy it. Like, you don't really need to give yourself that kind of suffering, because the chances of finding an original Halloween and in perfect shape and out just randomly in the wild through your travels, super slim.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one. Yeah, especially since it's mostly black poster. Lots of creases on that one.
Oh yeah, that's not. And I was gonna say, and to find somebody that's had it since it came out and not damaged it, that'd just be weird. You'd have to, like, it'd have to be the people next in line from us. Like, the people that show up to our estate auctions when we go, they're going to be like, oh, this is heaven. They're just going to be like, this is the greatest thing in the entire world. Look, this is exactly what I needed. The coolest people in the entire world, they had all these posters, they had all this stuff, and they took care of it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I found all the DC Directs.
They would be in my house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be in my husband's collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you mentioned taking care of things too, that's something that I get excited about, seeing other people taking care of stuff. One thing that we like to do is get our posters autographed.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
That's also polarizing with poster collectors. Some people think that just absolutely is a no-no. It mars the artwork. Don't do it unless you've got Clark Gable signing it, or Cary Grant, or Marilyn Monroe. Like, don't get anybody else to sign the poster. Stop it,
Yeah.
We like to do it. And, we'll take them to conventions, but we're, like, wicked meticulous about it. I mean, we've got, like, a plastic tube with a strap that you throw over yourself to keep it protected. I remember we were in line to meet Robert Patrick. I love Terminator 2.
Okay,
I love that movie.
Yeah.
So I had a poster. I already had Linda Hamilton sign it, and I wanted to get him to sign it. I'm super excited. Dude in front of us is getting him to sign something from Sons of Anarchy. So he's on that show. He just, throws his hand into his backpack and yanks out this folded poster that is not in any kind of holder
at
all. And he unfolds it, and it has been signed by like 20 dudes from that show,
Mm-hmm.
probably. It's it's worth $1,000 probably. And it looks like garbage. I mean, it's all
Yeah.
fringed and ripped. There's gouges. It's crinkled. It looks atrocious.
Yeah.
And I just, like, part of my soul died. Like, it was crushed on the floor, and I never recovered.
Yeah.
But it was like, dude, then we saw a couple weeks ago a woman who had a Walking Dead poster easily signed by probably 80 people.
Wow.
Like, we were in line behind her, and she was getting a guy who was in one episode to sign it.
Wow.
So, yeah, she was getting anybody involved to sign it. And she took good care. Like, she was just as meticulous about it as I am about that kind of thing. I'm like, yes. I almost high-fived her. Like, I was just so excited. Like, good job, you.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to make that kind of, like, and that is really cool. That is a huge... It's a huge effort to go to a convention. It's a huge effort to take whatever it is that's precious to you to that convention without having it, thrown in the back of a station wagon and, just bag thrown on it and all that. And like, there's so much thoughtfulness to that the amount of the lengths that people will go to have an entire cast sign something or as close to an entire cast sign something, it's really cool. And it's really intense, and that is their adventure, and it's possible. And like I was gonna say, I know when I sat down with Jim, I didn't make fun of conventions. They're just not for me. It's never been something that tickled my fancy, but I think they're really cool. I think every facet of film and comic collecting is just, it's really cool that it's there because it's all so in depth, and like. Horror Mania Con is in Jersey, isn't it? No.
Monster Mania.
Yeah, Monster Mania is in Jersey, and then we have a big thing in Baltimore, and there's so much stuff around, and you get to go do cool things. A friend of mine met the tall man from Phantasm, and went for a walk with him, just to hang out, and that was weird, but that chance is there, and she's a huge horror fan, and that's really cool. And I just, the amount of conventions that you guys go to, gotta get my personification correct, that you go to through your job seems very intense. Because I was going to say, I know you've gone to San Diego, and that's really awesome. Did you go there? You went through Gemstone, right?
Yeah, I went for work. What was like insanely cool is essentially my job there is to be an attendee and cover it.
Yeah.
So I go, I walk the floor, I look at what the vendors are selling, I talk to vendors, I talk to attendees. You having fun? What do you like? What's going on? What's this? What's that? I go to panels. I, take notes on the big announcements for, this show got renewed for season 3, and this comic is going to reintroduce this character that's been gone for 20 years. And I go, oh yeah, it's awesome. I write all the notes and write articles about it, interview auction houses that are set up or dealers that are set up. It's a lot of fun. It's exhausting. You get like 5 minutes of sleep if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of fun. And I mean, yeah, you get to meet so many people who are as into it as you are, more into it than you are. And a lot of the guests themselves, whether they're the, comic book artists or they're the celebrities who are, at the bigger booths and whatnot, everyone's having fun. Everyone's excited to be there and feeding off of each other's energy.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and everybody gets to walk away with a free case of the nerd flu.
Yeah,
I hear I listen to so many podcasts out of the West Coast that a lot of guys right after San Diego, everybody sounds sick because everybody was in the same building for much too long. But it is its own little fascinating universe. Like my whole my genre of life, my pushing boundaries is like, oh, I want to go to Burning Man and I don't want to remember any part of it. But realistically, San Diego is probably Burning Man for quite a few comic book fans.
Oh, yeah.
That, I mean, that's that thing that you would just die to go to. You save up everything that you got so you can get out there. People are coming from all over the world for that.
I met people from all over the place. I was chatting with a guy from Australia. I was talking to a woman from New Zealand, some guys from France.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were from all over the world for that thing.
And it's really cool. And I know the biggest complaint is that the comic book movies have taken over the prescience of going there to buy, like, you go there to buy comic books because a lot of people, if you're I'm going to a convention to pick up all the stray bullets that I have that are missing out of my collection because not everybody collected it. That's not a really easy book. It's not a super easy book to find unless you buy the omnibus, which whatever. But, for me to find every copy, like, yeah, you used to go to conventions because you knew some guy from way out of state is coming in and he collects weirdo comics with an X and, R. Crumb, and he's got all those books and stuff. And it seems like that may be pushed a little to the wayside because it is really super hype at San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego's more of a multimedia event now. As far as collecting for like vintage gold and silver age comics, there's still a pavilion, there's still dealers, but some of them don't have as good of sales as they would like. Mm-hmm. And there are a shock ton of, people who are there because they want to try to meet the cast from Defenders. Yeah. Or they are going to wait in line for, 12 hours for the Game of Thrones panel. Yeah. The chance to see them in person.
Which it still is, no matter what, if you're making the effort to go to a convention, whether it be small or big, it still is going to be like the overall convention feel. You're still going to leave just as excited. Yeah. You're going to be happy. You're going to be satisfied no matter what reason you're going for. And whether the amount of people being pushed through the door is the draw of X or the draw of Y, doesn't really matter because it is kind of just the kingdom of dorks. Yeah. no matter what, it is just the kingdom. Like if suddenly I could pick up all of Phil Dick's novels in every comic store I walked into because everybody loved the Amazon original Man in the High Castle, I'd actually totally be fine with that. Like I'm totally fine with that, but it's just another facet of dorkdom.
Yeah, it's the camaraderie. I mean, it's the understanding that other people will get what you get and like what you like and get excited. And I mean, I was in line for a panel and ended up having a 45-minute conversation with a guy about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah. And we were in line for a completely different thing. Yeah, yeah. But we were just casually somehow came up in conversation, and the two of us were just nerding out big time. His boyfriend just walked away. Was like, "I'm done with you two." And we just stood there for 45 minutes just geeking out while we were waiting in line. Yeah. But it was just so exciting to meet another person who gets it. You get it. Oh, yeah. Which is again with the poster collecting and any kind of collecting, you can meet people on forums that like the same stuff as you. It's very exciting, and you feel connected with them, and that's part of the fun of conventions. I mean, yeah, sometimes you do get tired of being packed in. If it's not a big enough venue, it does get a little irritating. But usually there is a good positive vibe with everyone who's there because they're all excited too. Whether it's because you're at a show like Baltimore Comic Con that's still really about comics, or you're at Monster Mania or Texas Frightmare or Chill or whatever, where you're with other horror fans who are like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna meet Robert Englund. This is so cool." It's it's a camaraderie.
Yeah, that's that really is the thing. It's I really want. I would really like to go. I would like to go to something at some point, but I do want to go with con vets that can help me pay attention because I do have that overwhelming thing. If I'm going to a used book sale at the end of October, and as soon as I walk in, I generally black out, and by the time I'm leaving, I got 2 cars that are filled with books, and I have no idea why. It's just I have that I get that overwhelming thing, you
the saturation,
in, and suddenly I'm dizzy, and I'm trying to I'm trying to find this or that, and it's well, there's 500,000 books here. I'm never gonna find exactly what I'm after, and of course I do it on days that I'm already scheduled to do other stuff, so it's my own stupid fault. But that's the thing is sometimes I'll see ads that are coming up, and it is a celebrity that I really, really, really want to meet. And I met, who am I thinking of? Hang on. What's his name? The weird guy that makes vodka. One of the Ghostbusters.
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, I met Dan Aykroyd.
Nice.
Right? It was 5 years ago next week, because it was the day after our wedding. I was off, and he was signing liquor bottles, and we went to the liquor store up in Harrisburg 6 or 7 hours before the event. Got a really good place in line, and then everybody showed up, and everybody like there was more than one Ecto one that showed up, and there was more than one set of Jake and Elwood Blues that showed up, and as we walked, like everybody walked in, we did, they're doing their thing, and everybody's getting a photo with them. They're dressed like Ghostbuster, all that fun stuff, and I just plainly shake his hand and I say, "Hey, your radio show is great," and it stopped him dead, and he's like, "Thank you. We're focusing really heavy on female blues artists right now, and we're really excited for where it's going." And I was like, "Well, I'm out west a lot, so I do actually get it in syndicated areas." And that was really exciting. And I'd really like to be able to do that to everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing is, like, I have no problem. I'll pay the ticket. I'll pay the price, stay in line. But I want to pick something that's going to make you feel sort of human, because I feel like sometimes you get overwhelmed by that. Like, there is that constant discussion of, just because I'm so hip and pop, there's that constant discussion of, if you're doing conventions, you're dealing with being that person from that, whatever that is.
Right.
You're always going to be that person from that. Yeah. But James Vanderbeek was just on Nerdist talking about it, and he's like, "I'm just happy that people know me as," like, right now he's doing a Vice series where he's pretending to be Diplo, an EDM music guy, and it's ridiculous. But, like, people know me as that guy, or people know me from Dawson's Creek, or people know me from, people whatever, Friday Night Lights. He's like, it is immersive, and sometimes it gets frustrating, but at the same time, it is really awesome. And, like, with, just to tie everything back in, with the digital frontier that we're living in, we do kind of take ownership of everything that we're doing. Everything that's meant to be for us, we take personal ownership over, to a point, like, where when we were kids, we would think those people were creepy, because those guys, like, those are guys that are waiting for the movie theater to open at 9:00, and they're standing outside Delco Plaza pacing, because they're waiting to get the first ticket so they can go in and see a movie. Like, those guys were weird. But now now everybody is that guy. Yeah. So it's kind of odd. But yeah, the convention thing, I would actually really like to go to one with you guys soon. Isn't Jersey comes up next, doesn't it?
Monster Mania Hunt Valley is in a few weeks.
That's right. Okay.
And that's actually where I'll be launching my next book.
Yeah.
Which is the Overstreet Guide to Collecting Horror.
I know, which we're going to have you on for, and you're going to give me an advance copy so I can actually read it front to back before. I'll have more than a couple of hours in my work week to get to it. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, conventions are fun. And like you said with Dan Aykroyd, if you can talk to them about something a little bit different than what they're there for, they get excited too. Like, again, signing posters, we love doing that. I got a Princess Bride poster, and it wasn't the regular one sheet. It was a reprint of Wesley and Buttercup before the whole story begins, when they're still the farm boy and the girl.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they're just standing looking at each other. It's so sweet. It's adorable. I loved it.
Yeah.
So I take that to go meet him, and he's like, "Oh, I've never seen this one before." Like, he was like, "Oh, that's cool." I'm like, "All right, cool. He's never seen it before." But then, as we're talking, I'm like, I love this movie, obviously. Brought the poster. But I like other things you were into. And I'm like, "I thought you were great in Saw." Yeah. I mean, he's Wesley. He's the Dread Pirate Roberts. And I'm like, "You're in Saw." And he looked at me, like, really sincerely. And he's like, "Thank you." Yeah. Because that, that's probably not something he was going to hear much about that day. If he was at a horror con, of course. Yeah. But it was at Awesome Con. So it was like a normal media, pop culture comics show. And, he got pretty pumped about that, like that I mentioned that movie. And, we've had other experiences like that too. Or if it's a poster that's been signed by other people, they're like, "Oh, who else you got on here?" Yeah. I've got a Scream poster that I've got Neve Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, and Roger Jackson on it. And they've all written a quote from the movie too. Oh, wow. Which is really cool. Like, I love that they did that. Matthew Lillard was the most recent, and he starts to sign it. I'm like, "Would you mind putting a quote on there too?" Because the other ones already had. Yeah. He's like, "Well, yeah, which one?" And I tell him the line I want. And he's like, "I actually ad-libbed that because I was trying to hit on Neve Campbell." Oh, Jesus. And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I actually said that to her. I was like flirting with her while actually acting." Oh, and we ended up dating for a couple of years. I'm like, "That's pretty cool." Yeah. So it's another, layer to my collection, because I already love the movie. Now I've got it signed, and I look at that line then I knew he ad libbed it. So that's why I asked him to sign it. But
Yeah.
I didn't tell him I knew that.
Well, yeah, of course. I was gonna say, of course you did.
Yeah, I knew that part.
Yeah, we're.
But
you're in. I was gonna say you're in good company because I do have that problem where if I want to learn about something, I'm gonna learn every detail that I humanly can.
Yeah,
like, it just I have to.
I tried to have when the 20th anniversary for the first Scream was last year. It was around the time of my birthday, so my request with my friends was for my birthday to watch all 4 Scream movies in a marathon, and I wanted to make it into a game and tell them fun facts.
Oh god,
and after the first 10 minutes, they were looking at me like, "I'm gonna leave your house if you don't shut up soon."
Yeah,
so.
I was gonna say, I think you might be the most intense film fan out of all your friends because I met all your friends at your wedding.
Yeah,
I think you're way dorkier than they are.
Yeah,
which is kind of odd.
But yeah, I mean, you know, taking posters and getting them signed and having the celebrity get excited about it too and think it's cool or be like impressed by how many people you got on there. Like it's a fun thing to do.
No, absolutely, and like you can. That is a good way to make it. Like it is everything that is celebrity love is definitely a passion, and there's a good way to do it, and there's a. You can do weird cerebral things. Like do weird. What's his name? I'm trying to think of that comedian. The one Man on the Moon.
Andy Kaufman.
Yeah. Do Andy Kaufman like cerebral jokes. Like show up to meet Matthew Lillard in an orange jumpsuit, in an orange electrician's jumpsuit, because that's what he wore in the beginning of 13 Ghosts.
Right.
One of the more underrated horror films. I actually really like that.
Oh, I
remake.
love that movie.
That was a good one. It was a good one. There are a bunch that get like that, and like I you know what? I think I do really want to go to a convention with you guys. Like
I actually interviewed Shannon Elizabeth and talked to her about 13 Ghosts.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So
she had that was a weird part for her in that she didn't fit well, and I think there was a mild casting problem because Tony Shalhoub was in it, and he's probably hard to cast with because he's kind of an odd fella. But like that,
it was a little bit of random casting, but I don't know. I feel like it worked.
It worked, but the family dynamic should have been strained because the mother had passed away anyway. And yeah, you're right. When you really do take it into context, and but no, I sincerely appreciate your time, and I really do want to go to a convention with you because you are releasing your next book, the Guide to Collecting Horror Memorabilia. Correct?
Just collecting horror.
Okay, collecting horror. I just want to make sure the title was right because I'm pretty positive there's at least 15 or 20 people that listen to this podcast that are gonna love that because they already do that.
It was so much fun because that's the first book we've done that's about a genre rather than a type of collectible. So I was able to get into. I covered posters, but action figures, model kits. Serial premiums, masks, prop weapons, autographs, animation cells, like tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff. And it covers, movies, TV. We have soundtrack article, comic books. Let's see what else. Video games.
Yeah.
First edition books, out of print VHS tapes.
Oh, that had to be rough to deal with.
That was pretty wild.
I used to go to a punk rock flea market out in somewhere. I can't remember where. I can't remember that. Out where Cabela's is, that area. But I went there and I met somebody who was a VHS dealer, and my mind was blown.
Oh yeah.
Like I've been trying to find the movie retriever, like the compendium book. I found one that's specifically on werewolves, and it's 400 pages long. And it's like, well, if I go through this, I'm going to learn all about VHS tapes and one-off DVDs and like low-end stuff that I don't really want to know about, but I'm going to have to look anyway. And like there's such a deep market for that kind of stuff. And some of it's really cool, and some of it like I can understand the camp of it really getting to you and being exciting. And then at the same time, some of it's real bad.
Oh, yeah. A lot of the movies, a lot of the VHS tapes for horror that are collectible are horrendous.
Yeah.
Because they were shot on video. They're video nasties. They're the ones that wouldn't get distributed. They were filmed over top of another movie. I mean, they're bad.
I was gonna say, were you forced to explore the thing I talked about with Zach Mummer? What's that certain type of film? Like certain type of 70s and 80s horror, like Toxic Avenger. They did the Toxic
Trauma.
Yeah, like did you have to like delve into trauma films? Because some of them some of them are really great. Some of them are really silly, or real, like just even the general idea of it. There's the one, I forget what it was, something cop, New York City. Yeah,
Sergeant
Kabuki Man,
NYPD.
Yeah, and like that's really fun and it's really weird. And then like they get into some that seem like movies that should have been really, really good Kevin Smith throwaways. Like they have like really good morality to them. They have a really good story. They're just shot the trauma way, and that's fine. But like, and then you get some of them that are just trash. Just we got bored to death on a Monday and we had nothing to do, so we just shot a movie.
Yeah. And I mean, that to me, that was part of the fun of that book, because I'm writing about Universal monster movies. I'm writing about Vincent Price, Hammer horror. This is cultured horror.
Yeah.
And then I'm writing about these horrendous 70s and 80s VHS movies that, I mean, people love them. And there's some that I love. I mean, there's plenty of bad movies that I like that I will, happily admit that I like, because whatever.
I was gonna say I really enjoy Roger Corman. I do not enjoy Andy Sedaris at all. He was terrible. But yeah, that's the weird, like, yeah, there's so much fun weird stuff to dig into, and I'm really glad that you have a book, because I am that kind of needy person that like I need a map. Mm-hmm. I'm not that kind of guy that will dig really deep just on a whim. Like if I have something that can like spark, I can open this and start looking into posters, and then I can look into films to watch, because I have an obsession with Criterion lately and all kinds of weird stuff. So I do need stuff like your your poster collecting guide or your horror collecting guide, because I'm just not well versed enough.
Well, and that's my goal for these books, our goal, my company's goal, is it's got to be stuff that is accessible to new collectors and people who are experienced, because you can't talk down to somebody who's already in the hobby. You need to give them something and stimulate their collecting. So in this particular book, there's a part that's about linen backing. If you're new, you're not going to know what that is, but if you've been around and maybe you're thinking about the pros and cons, you need to know more about the pros and cons. It's in the book.
Yeah.
If you are new and you don't know what all the different sizes are, you don't know what 1 sheet means, or half sheet, or 6 sheet, or lobby card, or insert.
Actually, yeah.
Those definitions are in there, and the internationals too. I mean, some of them.
Well, I was going to say, that is the one thing, that is a burning desire of mine, because somebody that we both know told me about lobby cards, I don't know, 14 years ago when I met him, and I still don't understand what the difference is. What are lobby cards? Were they more prescient before posters, or?
Lobby cards, the best way I can describe a lobby card is that's the original trailer.
Oh.
They were issued in either groups of 6 or 8, usually 8. First card, your title card. And if you're collecting, title card is the one that's going to be the higher seller. Mm-hmm. Title card is usually a smaller version of the 1 sheet, or maybe even the half sheet format. Mm-hmm. And the lobby cards, they're card stock. They were put in the windows of theaters to not just, they were a little more enticing than just the poster. So when you got that group of 6 or 8, the rest of the cards will show scenes of the movie. So you'll get a scene where, the bad guy's coming in through the window with the knife raised up, or you'll get a scene where the lovers are passionately kissing, or you'll get a scene where, the gun is in the guy's, he's about to reach out and grab the gun, like stuff like that. It hits key points in the movie. So that was like a trailer, essentially. Oh. So lobby cards kind of died out. I mean, they still held on until the 80s in some forms, but for the most part, they've been gone for a while. And they're usually cheaper than posters when you get into the vintage stuff, and you can get a set of lobby cards for decent price. Or even just a couple of cards. Sometimes you'll see them selling just as the title card. But that's what lobby cards are. That's the best way I can explain it. Is they're like the original version of a trailer. They show a bunch of scenes from the movie.
Oh gosh. Well, I wondered because there was there's a guy out at the flea market who had just a couple tables full of short boxes full of them, and I couldn't understand what they were or why they were so cheap or what particular necessity they held to be collected. So
another cool quirky facet that I dig is the press books. They were booklets that would be sent out to movie theaters. They would have synopsis of the movie, bios of the actors. It would have like suggestions for how to set up the posters in their lobby to maximize the attractive appeal. They'd even have like pre-written reviews that the theater could literally drop into a newspaper with specs on how big the artwork is and whatnot. They'd have like sometimes they'd have little gifts, little giveaway things that they'd include in the book, or they'd have directions on how to put together displays that would be on the counters. Like it was a little advertising book,
right?
And I mean, for the most part, those are pretty cheap. But when you get a new record or a new DVD or Blu-ray and you like all the packaging stuff, press books are cool.
Yeah,
because they've got so much interesting, fun material inside. Some of them are basic.
Yeah,
some of them are only two 4 pages, but then there were some that were like 50 pages long. Right. And they've got like all kinds of cool details and fun stuff inside.
That's good. Well, I was gonna say that's cool. Were they around long into the theater time? Like were they around like up into the 80s and 90s or?
They were. Honestly, there still are some press books released, but now they're digital.
Oh, okay.
So they still do end up getting released, but more now to like media outlets rather than theaters.
Oh, okay.
And it's a way to
get the gist.
Yeah, get the gist out, get some more information, exclusive information. Everybody, if you're in journalism, you love being able to say it's an exclusive.
Right.
So yeah, I like press books. I think they're fun, and they're still pretty cheap too.
That's really neat. I was gonna say that I don't even remember what I was gonna say, actually. No, that reminds me of when you said about having like something that you're opening and it's got a lot of media with it was like there are a couple of bands that do weird stuff like that with their albums where, like, of Montreal, you open up the LP and it's a giant poster of a horse. And the CD version of it was its own little whirly gig that you pulled the book out and you folded it 18 different ways and you had to whirly gig. The album was not great. The stuff that came with it was.
Yeah.
So, that's all really cool. And I was going to say, it seems like this is the perfect book to go along with a hobby that is like one of the most inexplicable things is a love of going to the movies, because it's never been cheap to go to the movies regularly, and B, it is like that's the one thing I hold nostalgia towards. And like you can even ask your husband when you have free time. I've burned so many, I've set fire to most of my stuff because I hold no value to anything nostalgically. Like, if I move, I burn at least 3/4 of my possessions because I don't want to take them with me. But like, that's the one thing is like every facet of the movies from production, design, writing, all the way to posters, to the theater experience, to going to track down old drive-ins that used to be there and nobody has any postcards of or anything like that. Like everything about it is just so gripping that like no matter what avenue you want to take with the movies, you're gonna love it. And you can take it so much in so many different ways. So it's very like it's one of those really fascinating things that like I personally cannot figure out why I love the movie so much, but I just do.
Yeah. I mean, a good movie will make you feel something. Like whether it's, you're watching when you're 10 years old and you're watching The Karate Kid and all of a sudden you just feel all virtuous and you want to, join the karate club and all that. Or it's romantic and you're watching a movie and it, gives you the courage to tell somebody how you feel about them. Or you like horror movies because they get you, they give you that shot of adrenaline and you get excited and it, it grips you. With the posters, for a lot of people, it's the connection to that feeling.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the poster and you're like, oh man, that movie's so good. Like I remember how fun that was to go see. And
Yeah.
that's part of the hobby that makes it so much fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, Titanic was the first time I ever held hands with a stranger, and she was a girl, so that was great. So like, yeah, you're right. I probably would pick that up because it does remind me of that, and that's super fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. But I'm looking forward to having you back on, and I'm dead serious. We should just go down to Hunt Valley together, and I should take my audio equipment with me and just walk around and talk to strangers, because it's kind of a thing.
People do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, the podcast gets set up down there.
Yeah, you're one of the few people that's not a stranger that I've had on, but seriously, 80% of the people, it's the first time I met them, and they just come in and do an episode, and it's a very weird conversation. So thank you so much for your time. And yes, Guide Collecting Movie Posters is on Gemstone.
Gemstonepub.com.
Yep, gemstonepub.com. You can order it direct. It's $15. Go get it. If you're into it at all, it's definitely worth going and being, going picking up and check it out.
All right.
So
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.